Ansary here, January 16th, 2017, coming to you from off the grid in southwest Colorado. I'm going to speak to the urban survival scenario. Whether you're dealing with a massive earthquake or you're dealing with a military invasion or an outbreak, zombie apocalypse, if you will, what strategies do you have if you're going to remain in your city? So I'm going to use Portland as usual. And this won't be the first time that I use Portland as an example because it's a place that we can poke, prod, measure. You can bring it up on Google Earth. When I mention places like Costilla County, you poke, measure, bring it up on Google Earth, see its proximity to the rest of the nation. Same thing when we talk about Denver. Same thing when we talk about major populated areas on the West Coast or the East Coast or other remote areas. Make sure you bring things up on Google Satellite so you can keep things in perspective. Because I'm going to give you my own advice, without a script. And I see urban areas as being very much at risk, especially on the West Coast and East Coast. See them being targets. And a lot of people have used the zombie apocalypse memes as some kind of like jokey thing. And I've made mention of this for a number of years. It's kind of embedded itself within pop culture and movies to where it's like something cute. So like there could be like an aspect of ourselves, you can even call it like our psychic selves. Really. Your psychic self, your clairvoyant self, the part of you that recognizes something's up and something could take place to where, people are acting maybe not themselves or maybe suffering from some sort of poisoning or demonized to the point where people are just straight up being shot or being quarantined in, say, a camp, a concentration camp. See, the zombie apocalypse propaganda, really, it's like all roads lead to that scenario with a human being being demonized. And I see those most at risk of being demonized as a zombie or catching something, being affected by some form of weaponry, being a mind weapon or a poison dropped or something to that effect. Dependency on the grid. Well, when the grid goes out and, that line is not able to process over at Whole Foods. Boy, how often have you seen this when there's no power? People are just waiting in line at McDonald's and at the grocery store, and they're just sitting there waiting and waiting. It's like something out of Idiocracy. As you kick the fast food ATM, and the ATM comes around and bonks you over the head. Or sprays you with a mist. Now relax. Oh, I'm no longer hungry. Oh, what was I doing? And then you just kind of wander off as the robot pickpockets you. And then, of course, sells you back your own material at a rate, a ransom. So the dependency on the cell phones, the technology, has led a lot of women into the trap of being vulnerable if, say, there's a price on their head. So getting out of Dodge and getting out of sight is going to be critical, and they're short-term and long-term. If, say, in an area, let's say Portland, and there's no power, and there is no local law enforcement, but people are still using I-5 and other roads and criminal groups to get in and out of the city and take advantage of a bad situation. And you might also think about the in and out points in your own city. Maybe you live in Austin, Texas. Maybe you're living in Kansas City, Missouri. Where else do we have major listeners or a lot of listeners concentrated in urban environments? Maybe there's somebody in Seattle, Washington. San Diego, California. Wow. Yeah. And you'd be a target as well with all that military stuff going on down there. Big time EMP target. So you want to look at risks, and you want to also look at how's the military or the government drilled in the area and practice shutting down the city. Because that would actually raise flags. If there's ever been any major drilling where they said how, hypothetically, let's just say Al-Qaeda drops a dirty bomb, how would we shut down travel in and out of the city, set up quarantine zones, and maybe do forced vaccinations? And perhaps have a secret Stasi police round up potential suspects, even if they're not guilty. Maybe just to use the excuse to, get something going. Some people will use the words martial law. It's been overused the last decade. People getting a lot of fake predictions. But we're actually more at risk than ever with a lot of people buying these official stories regarding terrorism and jihad. And a lot of fabricated stories regarding ISIS. Seems that America is being set up for something, and they'll blame it on a certain group, and then we'll go in this certain direction. And so we see places like Portland, Oregon have already had exercises like Top Off 4, where it was a quarantine exercise, which You can learn more about it this very channel, followed by Black Helicopters a year after that. So they've already trained then to send in the Night Stalkers, Special Ops, Black Ops, Navy Special Warfare Unit. They drop in with machine guns and they take down the enemy. Ooh, they had a similar drill, a zombie apocalypse drill. They shoot down the zombies in San Diego in 2012. I'm seeing parallels here. And then, of course, you have OHSU, the hospital, the quarantine, the radiation, spray them down, get off their clothing, walk through this little tubular thing. Whee! It's just like E.T. Whoa. Shit's getting real. Shit's getting real. Predictive programming, the zombie apocalypse. Top off 4, they had high school girls putting the zombie makeup, like, shrapnel in my face, it hurts, help me, government is here to save you, Al-Qaeda did it, oh my god, we're going to martial law, oh, and so they've drilled for this, and they put it in movies, like, True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger, where you have people basically playing the role of ISIS today, so take out an American city if their demands aren't met. And it could also, again, come in the form of just straight up going straight to World War III and a strike by the part of North Korea and or China in retaliation of something the United States does. And so an event that causes a panic, an exodus, a need for immediate urban survival, it varies. And there could be multiples. And they could be caused by natural and unnatural causes. There could be certain things, obviously, as you know now, floods, whether you believe those are natural events or not natural events caused by HAARP, they are increasing, as well as power outages. We see issues with the infrastructure. We see the solar influence, and then we also just see them not upholding an infrastructure because they see it as, well, it's going to get fucked up anyways. Don't work too hard on rebuilding those roads. Hey, but keep collecting the tax money. Keep the wheels of this machine, this carnivorous vampiric machine feeding on energy, human work, and literally doing something else with that energy. It's like ancient legends about the aliens and the gold. Yes, moving the gold off planet. Yes, redirecting human energy here in this world. But I'm already sidetracked. But it's good to get sidetracked to what this is really all about. This is spiritual warfare. It's almost as if a lot of people have been duped to cities like Portland. We use that as a template. Yes, move to Portland. Yes, manifest destiny, go west and fix your problems. Yeah, it's the place where young people go to retire. That's like old, like lingo, or a way to describe Portland from like 10 years ago. Now it's like you gotta have major money to live there. And it's a point where they had to let new people come in here. Folks, we realize that some of you are really stupid. And we laid out, we had to put together things you need to know before moving to Portland. Okay, you have several $1,000s to come in moving costs. You got to realize there's a housing crisis. You got to realize there's a homeless epidemic, and some of the people that are homeless used to have homes, and they lost their homes because they didn't pay their property taxes. And there's actually like a mental illness thing going on in Portland. So I've actually seen some people not pay their bills when they had the money to pay their bills simply because they just thought they shouldn't pay their bills with the property tax. I've seen it. I've seen it in someone close to me that was just so fucking stoned all the time that I don't know why he decided to stop making payments on his property taxes, but he had a pension coming every month, and he never really worked to save that house, and he ended up losing that house and moving into a boathouse, and I think he just nearly lost his mind. I think that he may have. Why did I bring that up? There's also psychological urban survival. So, you know, there are things that go on in certain areas or cities that are really, really intense. A lot of negative energy, and you got to be strong and grounded enough to not let that sea of negativity that exists in the ether around you in that city, to let it absorb you and become you. But to really stand in your own power and in your true self. You know, the idea is to get out of the urban environment, but you need to be able to shelter in place for a few days, and you can do your own research on food and water and the basic stuff, which is really basic. But it's really about realizing what's coming next. If it's in a situation where eventually the lack of power is going to cause issues with like squatters and looters and people trying to break into your house, and especially if you're a single woman, with maybe multiple intruders, once they realize that you're alone and or unarmed and or female, or to become a target. You don't want to become a target. It's better to become, are you realizing now why the burqa in aspects of Middle Eastern society has been adopted and welcomed during turbulent periods? It's the woman hiding her beauty, whether you agree with it or not, because they find themselves targets and trafficked. So you can have a situation, for example, where women might, and I think this may have happened throughout history, they may cut their hair or dirty themselves up or wear some sort of attire to where they look less sexy to potentially foreign troops or other criminals that may want to take advantage of them. And even go so far as to sexually abuse them or hurt them in front of another male out of spite, out of jealousy of what that male or husband has. Maybe even to make them watch. And we're reminded of the horrors of what's been done in our name in the Middle East at the hands of U.S. troops, what they've done to the people over there. And the fact that I've seen people not really show enough concern, that's what alarms me and shows me a whole world that won't show much concern when it happens to America. After all, look at what the Americans are going to be blamed for, and look at their silence. Look at the silence of Sanders, Clinton, and Trump with regards to the victims of war. You know that's not there. That means people that are falling into that system are okay with their silence. All troubling. All things that I actually interpret with my brain, my biological brain, in this podcast, You Better in Survival. These are all hallmarks of a society that's going to get hit and hit hard. Whether you see it as God's vengeance or karma or doing to others as you would have them do unto you. Well, ain't that scary if we actually take that literally? Law of attraction? Wow. Where do we want to take that? U.S. bombing all these countries, occupying all these countries, no consequences, no consequences. Oh, law of attraction works on one level, but not on another? Interesting. Tell me more, tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. I see something coming the next decade, and places like Portland coming under siege, no power, and all these people that were in denial, all of a sudden they're going to get their zombie apocalypse. That's not going to be a joke, and it's not going to be an annual zombie dance. And it's going to be clear to those that ever pretended to be a zombie or dressed like a zombie or start changing their hair to start looking like a zombie. It's like, whoa, you need to step back from that type of stuff. Just like the bad channeled New Age information and this Archangel, Archon, Michael nonsense, as well as the zombify yourself nonsense and this emo movement. It's almost become this front for this like depressed, nihilist attitude of we're a virus, what's the difference? Acting like the mind itself, consciousness has been invaded by something intrusive. And as I look at Portland, Oregon, I look at society and I look at some of these places, it's like I am witnessing and documenting what I believe, in my opinion, that some people may call crazy, an invasion of human consciousness. And it is known through its fruits and how it manifests. And even the gender warfare and the way they've turned the men and women against each other and created this fear and divide while they create these wars, and people not actually realizing it's not just a conspiracy theory. Something is in control of this reality. There may be an ultimate almighty, whatever. Something is steering events in a certain direction. And that's one step in seeing through the matrix. It's the next step in realizing that there are such a thing as miracles. And being on the right side and knowing you're protected. And that protection can be removed and will be removed as soon as it is given to you. If you start to harm people with your gifts, your brawn, your intelligence, your beauty to mislead and to embark on a selfish journey instead of a selfless journey. Yes, the universe has a way of schooling us, whether the students, the young souls in this classroom choose to learn from their lessons or not. They will still be schooled, however many lifetimes it takes. So do unto others as you would have them do unto you. To prepare for the world of tomorrow, you need to work on your own karma. And work on ways on helping others. And I'm finding a theory also, it kind of really, I met someone recently who talked about bad things that he did back in the day. And somehow he came to believe that you can undo some of those bad things by helping others. And it's important to understand that some people may say that's selfish, but it's practical. And some people really need to do the groundwork to undo the negative deeds that they've done. And so that's really at the cornerstone of preparedness. You can get all the info in the meantime on what you think you'll need in a backpack and way to disinfect water and, lightweight freeze-dried food. I mean, you're going to get this information from everywhere else, and the recommended best places to get this. You can even buy a 72-hour kit with everything in it. But is it going to have this information in it with regards to the mindset and realizing what kind of criminal elements you're going to be up against? As I speak to the men, make sure that you really love the woman that you're with, because it's going to be a full-time job protecting her, especially if she's attractive, and that a beauty is noticed and recognized by those roving bandits. It's just a way of life. And somehow or another, it's like your society, our society's been screwed up to thinking that we're going this opposite direction where everything's safer with surveillance cameras and technology. And the fact that technology has replaced real male-female relationships, and women can turn to a cell phone for instantaneous gratification protection from the system, from the state, the government, replacing the male protector. They're less prepared. They're not as strong as they would be if they had to already rely on resources around them or a community. By people being kind of socially conditioned to worship the skyscrapers of our reality, when lights go out, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be targets right away, and those cell phones will be tracking devices. So for a lot of women out there, understand, once the lights go out, you need to ditch your cell phone. Especially if you have any suspicion that you could be someone targeted in such situations. Some people obviously won't be, for whatever reason. And it could be an age thing. It could be other factors. But there are certain people that would be considered more desirable in a worst case scenario with regards to human trafficking. Facts are facts. Younger white women. Especially those with certain genetics. And I think there's a darker agenda behind the whole thing. Take a look at all the years and years, as I move on to the next topic, this being very hot, of families destabilized at the hands of this New World Order system. As you also try to make sense out of why some form of evil would even want to do that. And it's like, why not? They've already done it, and they are doing it now. Why would others think that it would never come to America? That families in America would never be broken up and forced into camps and called terrorists, and to have their daughters and fathers persecuted before the town square in order to break them down and force them to bow down and kiss the ring of the new global system that is now coming out with its vampiric wings and announcing itself. There seems to be a block with a lot of people in seeing this, in actually taking to heart things like the Golden Rule and going, yes, wait a minute, millions dead in the Middle East in just the last decade. This cannot be good for the future of America. And what about the other countries and the allies of the United States and the things they've done to the people of Palestine? Wait a minute. What if God really is just? It just takes a little bit of time. Then what? And I would say that you need to make sure you're on the right side, because if you've been serving the system and feeding the system, even in auxiliary ways, technological ways, staffing, voting, engaged in propaganda in the darkest of levels, playing the role of the Pied Piper, keeping people in line, bullying people, thinking outside the box. Are you sure that your side of the street is clean? And when it, say, for example, be attracting some sort of karmic return that could come in a multitude of a variety of ways. This is the kind of stuff that people should be thinking about, and why these podcasts are made, and why I'm able to handle even people saying some of the stuff's crazy, or even looking beyond it. It's a matter of reaching the few of you that I can, and reminding you this is a battle for your soul. Last thing you want to do is getting involved in demonizing all immigrants and getting on board the white genocide hysteria and other things. This is all there to entrap the souls and teach people to hate, and to put out energy that will, in fact, and to judge in ways that they themselves, as Americans later, will be judged as American refugees, as people flood the freeways, as people find themselves in situations where they have to leave their cars by foot with their little kid, holding their kid's hand, worried about kidnappers, worried about their wife, with all types of elements around them and families, but everybody really like scrambling rats on a sinking Titanic, not working together, but being all out for their own family units. And it just being a scrambling like collective of like 3, 4 over here running, and one over here and one by themselves, and really a lot of chaos as a result of the fact that we've been programmed to fear each other and not work together and be, caught up in the Civil War. Oh, who'd you vote for? Clinton, Sanders, Donald Trump, and not realizing, oh man, we are being divided from within way before the invasion begins. So people are going to be all blaming each other in 4 years, or in however long the stuff starts kicking off after the 2020s, without even realizing they've all been set up. At that time, I won't be able to reach Americans. Maybe I'll live, maybe I won't. But I know that in my heart, this information can help you. You need to know where you're going. You need to know where you're going. leaving an urban area. So if you were to be leaving Portland, Oregon, there are places you would obviously be heading to in Washington or Central Oregon, areas around Bend, but maybe not Bend itself. You'd also be scouting out to some of these areas, and you would also be attempting to live in some of those areas. And you're going to find in a lot of those areas the land use codes are going to oppose you moving there without a septic tank. And that is why I wish that before these things get really crazy, that we can have some positive change on the local political level with regards to off-grid rights. And if you want to help me, I think we can help people survive some of the things that are to come. If people were enabled to build and prepare and start growing food, the last thing some people need to be worried about is looking over their shoulder at some county code enforcement coming up on their property saying that they got to get off. And it's a risk that most of the off-gridders in America face today. And it's very, very unfortunate. So, I mean, the whole principles of bugging out and grabbing the essentials, they can be very similar with regards to urban and rural. And there's benefits, for example, to having an RV, even if the mileage isn't great, but maybe using an RV to power something that's going to have a lot of your stuff to, say, somewhere within an hour. And there could be an area in which there are many trees in which you're off-grid, but there's always going to be the risk of wildfires and the need for you to relocate yourself very quickly somewhere else to perhaps an open space. In the end, really, it's going to come down to a lot of sincere prayer, and it's going to be like a day-to-day miracle. And if you find yourself in the path, and if you find yourself protected in multiple cases, and maybe it's already happened, you trust that faith and you keep walking. And in some cases, you take a risk and you try to save someone's life. And in the knowing that if you end up getting shot by a bullet from one of the robbers and one of the guys trying to take one of the girls, you're going to be off to a better place because you did the right thing. In some cases, you may need to react immediately without fear. And you may need to bust somebody up very quickly if there's an opening. And you're going to have to be brave enough to do it and do it with full power and force and take him down. And take him down. Some men are going to be put into situations where they can take advantage as well, and they're going to be burning their own soul. They'll be tempted by the devil. The devil will create... have you ever heard of the rape of Nanking? You can Google and learn about what the Japanese did to the Chinese. And we're not singling out the Japanese. We're not singling out any particular group. But I'm telling you, you're going to have an occupied America. You're going to be having problems. You're going to be having people coming and going and disappearing from the camps. You're going to be having people prostituting for their own survival. You're going to be people trafficking others for their own survival. In some cases, they may be female, the traffickers. We've already seen it in our nation. In the sickness of what is now, yes, things like this are already happening. So obviously, one of the reasons why some people might want to be underground is because of the intensity of the headhunting in certain areas. They may be underground in bases because they're freaked out because they're protecting their daughters. And they may have a bunker in their own backyard. Their house may already been kicked in by 10 gangbangers. Like something out of Thriller. And they're screaming and they keep kicking. And what they've done is they've retreated somewhere and they've covered up their tracks to where someone doesn't know their bunker is there. And it could be one of those cylinder things like bought from survivalcenter.com. And it could be sealed off. And the people could be trying to, break into it or pop into it. Maybe they would eventually leave after a period in time and realize we're not going to get in if they're able to find the bunker to begin with. But the idea is to have it hidden well. So in certain situations where it's hidden, they're not going to find the people hiding in the bunker. They're going to be looking around going, okay, this is what we can take, this is what we can steal, and we're out of here. Or they're going to stay. So there's obvious danger of being stuck in a hole if they're going to stay on your property. When you have your daughter, your wife, and your kids down there, and it's like a gang. It's like a biker sector. They're forming right there on the fly with their colors and everything, and their rules and what they're about. They're the new Mongols 2.0, and maybe they'll be working with the military. There's a 1980s movie called Survivor, and there are some things that I've talked about that are in that movie, and there are things that are in the plot to America you can learn from. And I've also referenced things like V the miniseries. It's amazing how many of these messages also they live that came through in the 1980s that we don't necessarily see today. But they have been programming people for disaster. And so topics like zombie apocalypse survival, nuclear war survival, these are now trending topics for the masses. And what I see the publications do that I've seen come out recently is say that most people are going to die on the planet. It's almost like they're taunting or putting down the population. It's like, who's writing this? And it's not like that writer's a part of the conspiracy, but it's like it's the nature of the zombie apocalypse meme. Ha ha ha. Walking Dead series, TV show. Funny, funny. He. Hey, where would you go to survive nuclear war? Now there's tensions with Russia, and stories about the Putin telling his people to get down in the bunkers, and then people talking about, NATO being on Russia's doorstep in Poland, and U.S. troops joining them, and people saying that Obama's going to start, war with Russia to stop Trump, which is really disinformation. Trump will just continue the agenda of war with Russia. People are deceived, and it's difficult for me to see so many deceived. And so, it's not a matter of not having hope, but letting you know on a practical level, honestly, ladies and gentlemen, this is where it's headed. And as far as I can tell, it is business as usual, and it is right on schedule. Right on schedule. 2025, China, in my sights, the red zone, pun intended, possibly. This 2025 period, Russia, China, West Coast, occupation, concentration camps, disappearing Americans, headhunters, cartel, China-Russia connection. Okay. Women at risk, especially in certain areas, especially those with negative karma. It's not something I'm willing at a manifestation. It's like I've already been there. So you could see how these urban areas in Portland instantly turn into the worst places on earth instantaneously, because their targets, you have large armies amassing. And they're going, they're going to even be a bunch of armed men and tough. A lot of those guys are fucking survivalists, fucking seen the writing on the wall. They're gone. And I talk about that in other podcasts, when good men leave society because of social engineering and gender warfare. The nice guys continue to finish last. So the women are left with the men that are some of the first to bend over and join the new system, whether it be the offering of a microchip on the part of China, offering $1,000 or who knows what else, or joining their little civilian task where now they can feel a little important, have a little badge and be a little hall monitor. They can patrol the street. Yeah, I think it's talking about block by block. Wow. Well, I'm coming up with this on the fly. Hopefully the aliens and the archons aren't taking notes. Yeah, you're appointed to the commander of this block, and we're going to collect you all in this socialistic new world order where you're connected with that person and that person. You're all special and you have privileges, and you can turn in your parents and whatnot. And here's this little shiny little badge, and here's a gun, and here's a little walkie-talkie, and perhaps some other new technology that's like an advanced smartphone that's used to track escaping prisoners. Inner symbolism from the Running Man with the tracking device. No, I haven't seen the Hunger Games, but it's like they are prepping people for this, but they're also prepping them for defeat, and they're making people that are prepping for it on TV shows look like a fool. And in the end, they leave you with your mouth hanging and not even knowing what to do, where to go, what county's safe. And the off-gridders haven't even organized themselves to defend their fellow off-gridders' property rights. And I'm advocating that too. So in a way, I'm trying to help a lot of you with a lot of major shit with regards to surviving, getting off-grid, and protecting your family and protecting your loved ones and the women in your life. There's a lot of various valuable things that you're going to get from these podcasts. So that's why I recommend you subscribe. In addition to getting prepared, if you want to donate on a regular basis per month, you can do that over at alexansary.tv or via Patron. And that would be a great way to support these broadcasts. But I haven't really done a longer series on wargaming, urban survival. And I think I have it in me, being that I lived in Portland, Oregon for so long. And a place like that does have tunnels, and a place where you can temporarily get underground if there was a blast, and to have basic necessities like a gas mask or basic fundamentals, and to know things like the spring water corridor. They can get someone out of a place like Portland to use it as a template to know your way out of a city because you've already studied it and you've already studied the bike trails, and to have a plan of action. And you may not know what's coming next. You may literally be in a situation as we close here, to bring this down to our fundamental concept of urban survival. You got to get the fuck out of there. You got to get out of the danger zone. You may be able to come back in a few days. You don't know that you won't be able to. You may be able to come back in a few weeks. It may take a few months. But certain things you're going to have to figure out later, like where you're going to get your next meal from. You may have to travel light in order to keep moving, meaning you can only carry so much food. So you have the basic essentials that you've trained with and you've hiked with. whether it be a tarp, a tent, something to keep your hands warm, something to make food very quickly, to heat things up, to filter water. And I always mention grapefruit seed extract for the purification or disinfectant of, say, river water. In a lot of cases, the river water is clean enough. We can either drink it as is, or add some grapefruit seed extract or something like that to disinfect. Of course, the basic clothing that you need, inner level. It's all that you can learn on your own. But what is the most likely scenario you're going to be dealing with, and the most likely threats, and the best places to go and the worst places to be? Now, that information is not really, I don't even see people even trying to give you that level of strategy, personalized, up-to-date strategy, and using particular locations as a template. And so I'm going to keep using Portland as a template, and that you can take these same fundamentals of getting out of the city and apply it to your place, wherever it is, as you look at the surrounding areas, and you look at BLM land, and you look realistically at where you would bug out to. And then, of course, you prepare to bug out in the different seasons. Try the different 4 seasons. So winter, fall, spring, summer. Practicing bugging out for several days in the different seasons. And while you're doing that, try to spend less time on your cell phone, but you also want to see where you get a signal and where you don't. And maybe test out some of the backpack solar gear and some of the technology. Practice, off-grid fishing. Have some sort of a fold-up. Go somewhere where you can practice fishing. And practice filtering water or harvesting water. It could even be dew in the morning when you wake up and all that's moist, and having something set up with your tarp, and then going through a praxis of filtering and disinfectant. You don't want to be relying on a bunch of bottled water. You want to practice your survival skills there on the go. Of course, identifying edible plants. There might be information online. There's also apps, I believe, for your cell phone. And I don't know what the names of those are, but it was around a few years ago. Certain technology where you literally, it's like facial recognition. And so, or certain forums that you can join, or websites where you post images of the edibles, the wild edibles that you find, and then you're able to get it identified right away. You might want to do this, in advance, to where you don't need technology, but you're using the technology as a tool to help you advance sooner. In fact, I'd love to do a video demonstration of how this works. But all I've seen so far are the websites, and I don't carry a cell phone, so I'm not able to demonstrate for you how this works. But this is a faster way to learn your edible plants. And of course, there's lectures. There's learning the old traditional way. And, maybe you can go somewhere where they give a tour in the spring, and maybe ask if you can film. And then try to document, because you're going to be hit with like 15 plants, 20 plants, 25 plants. The particular ones you want to pay attention to, the root vegetables, anything that could be dug up when there's really nothing left. There's really going to be very few humans that are able to identify edible root vegetables. Then there'll be a lot of trial and error and people getting sick. That whole experiment of trying, try 5 seconds on your tongue. If you don't feel anything, then chew it up. For a certain amount of time, and wait for 3 minutes and see if there's any stinging, and then go to the next level. And then some people say that that's actually a very unsafe thing to do, because you don't get that type of bitter or numbing response with all poisonous plants. Of course, practicing making food very quickly on the fly. So you have your little jetpack, and now you got your mountain house. Okay, how fast, soldier? Okay, unless you just prefer to do the MRE thing, how fast can you make your food, eat your food, and put your stuff away? And can you do it in a way without making a lot of noise? Can you do it in the dark? And do you have proper lighting and multiple lighting? And headlamps, very, very important when your hands need to be free of certain things. It's just like having a waterproof jacket, having a headlamp with multiple batteries for something like that. Very, very valuable. In addition to, with regards to self-defense, certain batons, knowing how to use those, certain knives, not being solely reliant on a firearm, and having some basic, fundamental self-defense abilities. For me, it's not a violent thing. It's really like a moving meditation. So I don't have the same aversion to training as some people seem to. It seems that some people have some sort of assumption that if you're practicing martial arts, that you're an angry, violent MMA person. And you're also going to find on this channel a lot of podcasts where I speak out against the MMA of today's day and age and how that's not real martial arts. So in addition to survival skills, having meditation skills and martial arts skills, or other powers of the mind and or spirit or body, geez, let the imagination fill in the blank. Don't do the conventional. Be the unconventional. And having a sixth sense is ultimately going to be one of your best assets, even more so than a compass. Like, you can look at your compass and go, okay, I can go this way or that way. It's your intuition that makes the decision. Which would be a safer way? Now we're back to Portland. Picture yourself at Powell Butte, and there's some military activity going on in Powell Butte, and there's some helicopter flyover. And you're going, should I go left or right? In this pass, close to the Springwater Corridor, what will keep me more hidden, for example, from the helicopters? And by the way, Powell Butte is close to the Springwater Corridor, so anyone can get into Powell Butte quickly within the same day of getting out of Portland. If there's a blast in Portland, you get out via the Springwater Corridor, or there's another way. There's Marine Drive, not to mention the neighborhoods, just going over fences and whatnot. That sounds like a scene from Out of Cops. Like dogs chasing you and biting your ass and taking a piece out of you, literally. Like McGruff the crime dog. But, I mean, the idea of going along Marine Drive is going along the Columbia River. You're going to be seen by all aircraft. And so there's going to be other areas, and there's a reason why there's more homeless along the Springwater Corridor. There's things that you can learn from the homeless. Where are they going now to get out of sight, just to sleep? And some of those same areas you're going to find are places where someone's actually going to want to hike themselves out of the city itself. Remember, you got to fight your way out. I haven't mentioned bear spray. Bear spray has been recommended by someone that survived on the streets for many years. And while that person won't touch something like, say, what we would call brass knuckles, something that has the ability to knock someone out, and I may recommend that, especially if you have boxing ability, absolutely smash through anything that comes your way. He would advocate instead bear mace, and also for legal reasons, and be able to take out 5, 6, 7 dudes. And, you need to be very quick at that and realize that some people aren't quick enough with their mace, and some of their mace isn't strong enough. But bear spray, which you might want to have anyways, generally would have that type of kick to where without killing a bunch of dudes, you could spray a bunch of dudes, but you have to do it quick enough and get back. And perhaps, there's going to be a number of benefits to having goggles, whether you need glasses or not. But dust storm stuff, I wasn't planning to get into a list, but I already listed other things already. Like if you have the bling and you have the money, sure, get yourself some night vision goggles. But most of we don't have the money for that, and it's really inflated, really what you get, unless you're more familiar with that level of technology, But remember, you got to pack it for miles and miles and miles. And so that's why I'm recommending that people go out to BLM land and they use their equipment and they use their gear, and they also get away from society and practice that detox. And if they have any addictions, that they start curbing those addictions, drug addictions or others, pharmaceutical, legal or otherwise. There may be a situation where they have to go without everything, and they need to be at least prepped for handling the symptoms of going through a massive dump in toxins in their body, a meltdown. And the worst time to panic is actually during a major emergency. That's when you need to think the most level-headed. When people panic, they can do things that can lead to the end of their life, or even take suicidal action as a result of panicking, killing themselves, or using incredibly poor judgment to where they literally run into the arms of the enemy because they're freaking the fuck out. And they're the furthest thing away from their intuition. A lot of women are always freaking the fuck out because they'll be surprised by things that they thought in their spiritual communities told them that we had moved beyond, that we had ascended beyond, that these things have been worked out, that they're going to have a panic attack. And there's going to be some poor decision making. So you want to avoid that. And you want to avoid entangling yourself with other people that are going through that. You can't help everybody. You can't be everybody's savior or leader. You can go, okay, well, there's a few friends that we're going to hang together, but don't start thinking dependent like I need to have now my own crew, 10 to 15 people. All that's weight. All that is potential drama. If you really are close friends and say you've known each other for years and years, great. But just meeting up with random strangers, I mean, that could be a miracle. I think there'll be people brought together that out of mutual desire to survive, they end up being some sort of a tribe. And it's like something out of a TV show. And then in other cases, you don't want to be a part of that tribe. And you don't want to succumb to the rules of other people. Now, with regards to urban survival, this is bringing up stuff I've talked about before. In certain intentional communities, there are certain people with their own agenda regarding such. So there may be men or certain landowners that aim to take advantage of the people that they take in, the American refugees, off the road. And they're going to say, like, look, we're saving your life. We're taking you off the road. Now, I'm going to sleep with your wife. Or something to that effect. Or there could be some games that the female is playing, or the grandmother, or who knows. But there are some people that take in others because they're corrupted and they want to use others or make slaves out of some. And we see what people will do now before the system has even collapsed. And I used an example of someone that, in a matter of a few months got his name on a woofing website where people basically, it's slave labor in some cases, to where all you're doing is working off 8 hours a day, a place to lay your tent. And I think it's presented as something to where it's like sharing. It's not like voluntary slave labor. But if you're willing to like volunteer and do that all for just a place to rest, there are people that will take advantage of your labor. And in a grid down situation, like I said, with relationships and putting people's hands on other people's significant others, people will feel more in the right to do that because they're holding over survivability. We can banish you. And when you want to go back out on the road with those bikers, maybe you didn't hear me, boy. The world ain't safe out there. There's actually a movie about a guy who rescues a woman from an alien invasion, and she actually has to fight her way out because the dude's psycho. She thinks the dude's made it up. She actually gets out there and finds out that there really is an alien invasion. So in that sense, there are multiple threats. And in the end, she's able to, God is on her side. The angels are with her. She's the chosen redhead. The chosen one, the female, ends up, I forget what the name of this movie is, but she ends up getting to one of the few army resistance military, she's ex-military, bases, and she joins the fight against the aliens. More predictive programming, by the way, Project Paperclip. So people are being prepped for the aliens to save them, and they're being prepped for the alien attack anytime now, and they're not really looking at what's going on within human consciousness. If you can create scenarios to where women are being targeted and we have no infrastructure, and scenarios like now to where you think what I'm saying is crazy, how is this not already a society under hypnosis? The unthinkable, all these zombie apocalypse, all depleted uranium, that's right, phosphorus. The testing of white phosphorus in Afghanistan. Oh yeah, well, those people have been burned, and some of those people have been killed and their children kidnapped and raped in front of them and mutated. So yeah, we're going to kind of ignore the fact that zombie apocalypse has already arrived for them. They're hell on earth, they're into the world. We're over here now doing zombie apocalypse dances. Yay, Walking Dead, YouTube ad, zombify yourself. What the fuck is this sick shit? Oh, let's just make a joke out of what's in our subconscious as to what's coming to our society, instead of actually preventing ourselves from becoming zombies. Oh, let's like dress like a zombie. Let's turn our hair blue also, and some sort of signature sign that we're getting our information on fashion from the aliens. Thank you, Southeast Portland, Hawthorne Street, for the memories and the education of a lifetime regarding the intergalactic human connection and fashions today. Oh, the nihilist, anti-human attitude sweeping society, the gender warfare, and the good men leaving society. And the men that remain becoming increasingly, feminized isn't really the right word, but definitely demasculated, as they go, domo, arigato, Mr. Roboto. It's a ticking time bomb. And look at places like Portland, it's like multi-threat, earthquake 9.0, break off, coastal. That may be the thing that saves the friggin' Portlanders. They go tribal. It's going to be like Lord of the Rings. Cascadia! There's actually a novel where it literally does break off. It's called Ecotopia or something, and it really becomes like its own region. And then you have, the risk of places like Portland or other West Coast or East Coast cities that are easily within reach of our future enemies, China and Russia. Major cities, major skyscrapers, boom! boom, and then you see like this massive shift from what was a normal society dependent on grocery stores and the food bringing things in and the cops to defend people, to all these people freaking out at once, and then the criminals amongst this sick society that will do the unthinkable. And then check out my bystander effect podcast, because it's real and it's alive, just like that person being beat up in the mall and the people just sitting back and watching going, oh, the bystander effect, while the organized crime gangs go 10 on 1 or 20 on 1, and the people just sit there and gasp and go, ah, ah, and all the strong men are like not even in society, they're like surviving up in the hills somewhere. Like the people, like literally, they're just like, no, don't hurt me, please, don't hurt my, and then somebody's like, boom, jaw broken. Somebody grabs for his wife. Sorry, dude, you're pleading for them to not take your wife, was not listened to, playing it nice, didn't help you. There's going to be a lot of that type of situation. A lot of humiliation. A lot of humiliated men in the future. And I'm going to do my best to reach enough men and give them the right information to where they will not be humiliated in such a way. They will be forewarned and they will be forearmed. Sometimes I feel like there's a military general inside of me that I'm just suppressing, that wants to tell you how to take out the enemy. As you sit in a watchtower and you sit there and you see 1, 2, 3, and it's like sniper time, baby. Boom, 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 boom. At every single kidnapper or member of that gang that's coming into your turf, your compound, your land, who knows what it is, your neighborhood. And you're using an abandoned window in a burnt out, bombed out apartment. And you know who they are, and you're the one with a 30-06. And you know that if you take out the heads of that particular gang, you could save the lives of hundreds to thousands of women. Because perhaps you had information that that gang alone was responsible for hundreds of heads. This day is coming. Certain places in America will be ground zero. Portland, I believe, will be one of them. Certain boulevards, certain streets, places like Sandy and Burnside, Powell Boulevard, and other areas, 11th Avenue, 11th Street, and certain neighborhoods, while you see checkpoints with the military over at 122nd and all the way down. You think you're just going to get on I-205 and get, oh, well, that's what they put that military base there a couple years ago. Shut down, checkpoint, quarantine, baby. You ain't going nowhere. Unless you're getting out of sight and you're going on foot. And you know the ways out of the city. So start prepping, start drilling, start knowing where you're going to go. Start realizing what you're up against if you're thinking you're going to certain off-grid areas with regards to land use codes, and start adapting to places where you're parking from place to place, and perhaps a vehicle that you're camouflaging that you're living in it, preferably high mileage, preferably 4x4, so you can get to different places in America. You can do the RV path. I recommend that you get a little bit more fiscal, with an assumption that gas prices are going to explode, and obviously there's going to be a gas ration if there's a conflict. Have enough gas to run a high mileage car, 4x4 that'll get you into certain mountains, definitely a bigger asset than an RV that'll do you 5 miles to the gallon. All right, that's all the information I'm giving for now. Stay tuned for more. Subscribe, share this information, help save lives. Alex Ansary sign off, January 16th, 2017.